The city had a rhythm of its own, but it was not a kind rhythm. Rain pattered softly against the rooftops, sliding down broken gutters and splashing onto the cracked streets below. The smell of wet concrete mixed with rotting trash and exhaust fumes, forming an odor that clung to the corners of the alleys. Among these shadows, Mara walked with careful steps, her worn shoes slipping on wet stones. Her coat, thin and patched in places, could hardly keep her warm. Mara's mind was elsewhere as she clutched the small bundle of her son's coat close to her chest. Eli, only 4 years old, was asleep, or at least pretending to be. His small hands clutched at her coat, and every now and then a tiny whimper escaped his lips. Mara's heart twisted at the sound. She wished she could trade places with him, take all his suffering onto herself, but the world did not work that way. She had to survive for him. Every day, every meal, every scrap of bread mattered. The alley she entered was filled with piles of discarded food and broken packages. Mara had learned the patterns of this part of the city. Each day she came here at dawn before most of the people woke, before the sanitation workers arrived to sweep away whatever scraps remained. She knelt beside a heap of old cardboard and wet plastic, her hands searching carefully. A half-rotten loaf of bread, a squashed packet of rice, some wilted vegetables, anything that could be salvaged, anything that could fill a hungry stomach. She pulled out a small piece of bread, examining it carefully. There were black spots along the crust and the smell was sour, but she knew Eli could eat a little. Any food was better than none. Her stomach tightened, not from hunger. It had grown numb to that, but from worry. Would it be enough? Would it last until tomorrow? Mama? Eli's voice was soft but heavy with hope and hunger. Is it enough? Mara looked down at him. His brown eyes, bright and curious even in this harsh world, stared up at her. His hair was damp and matted from the rain, and his cheeks were pale. She forced a smile, though it felt weak and fragile. Yes, love, this will be enough for now, she said gently, though her voice trembled. Eat slowly and it will last. Eli took the bread carefully, holding it as if it were a treasure, and nibbled at it. Mara watched him, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. She remembered when she could feed him freely, when she could buy fruits and sweets and watch him laugh with crumbs on his cheeks. That life felt like a dream now, distant and unreachable. Mara's mind drifted as she worked. She remembered the days before the city became so unforgiving, before her husband had left, before the factory closed, before the rent became impossible to pay. Back then, she had a small apartment with windows that let sunlight in. She had a job at a tiny bakery, where the smell of fresh bread made her heart light. She had Eli, and he was all joy and laughter. But life had changed quickly, and Mara had no time to adjust. Bills piled up, friends drifted away, and the world seemed to shrink around her. When her husband left, she felt her heart break, but she had no time to grieve. Eli needed her. Every moment she spent thinking of herself was a moment she could not feed him, clothe him, or keep him safe. And so she pushed down the sadness, burying it beneath layers of duty and love. The rain was falling harder now, dripping into the piles of trash and creating small puddles in which pieces of old food floated. Mara shivered but did not stop. She dug carefully through a damp carton, finding a few potatoes and some half-rotted vegetables. Not perfect, but something she could cook. She tucked them into her small bag, careful not to spill anything. Mama, I'm cold, Eli whispered, rubbing his tiny hands together. Mara pulled him close, wrapping her coat tighter around him. I know, my love. Just a little longer. Soon we'll find a place to warm up. But Mara knew that soon was a fragile promise. The city had no warm corners for them, no friendly shops where they could sit without paying. Every shelter had rules, and every rule reminded her that they were outsiders, unwanted. And yet she kept moving. She could not give up. She could not let Eli go hungry. As she walked, her eyes caught sight of other people, some rushing past, some ignoring the rain, some laughing under umbrellas that she could not afford. Mara felt a pang of envy, but she swallowed it. Their happiness could not change her reality. She focused on survival. She focused on Eli. Hours passed like this, a blur of alleys and trash, rain and cold. Mara found a small park where the grass was muddy and wet, but at least it was slightly sheltered by old trees. She set down her bag and looked at the small potatoes and vegetables she had collected. We can make a little soup, she whispered to herself, trying to make it sound like a promise to Eli. Eli watched her, his curiosity shining through his tired eyes. "Will it taste good?" he asked, his voice hopeful. Mara smiled, trying to make it real. "It will taste like magic," she said. "Like magic that keeps us warm." She found a small patch of dry leaves and sticks, carefully arranging them so she could make a small fire. She had learned this trick from other mothers on the street. A fire would keep them warm for a little while, and the smell of cooking food might bring a small comfort to Eli, if nothing else. As the flames flickered and the potatoes began to soften, Mara's thoughts drifted again. She thought of her mother, who had died when Mara was very young. She remembered the stories her mother told her about kindness, about helping others, about never losing hope. Mara clung to these memories, though hope often felt fragile in a world that gave her so little. Eli leaned against her shoulder, his small body relaxing slightly. Mara felt his warmth and his trust, and she allowed herself a brief moment of peace. In that moment, the world seemed quieter, kinder, even if only for a few minutes. But peace was always temporary. A loud noise startled them, a car horn, a shout from a passerby, the harshness of the city breaking through their fragile bubble. Mara held Eli close, whispering that it was okay, that she would protect him. She had learned to move like a shadow, to avoid trouble, to survive quietly. Every day was a test, every step a careful calculation. Even as she cooked their meager meal, Mara kept her eyes on the world around them. She noticed a man across the street standing under an awning and watching. He was not like the others who ignored her. There was something in his gaze, curiosity maybe, or concern, that made her uneasy. Mara's instincts told her to move, to protect Eli from strangers, and yet a tiny spark of hope flickered in her heart. Perhaps this man could help. Perhaps there were still people in the world who cared. For now, she focused on the soup. The smell was not enough to fill their bellies, but it was enough to bring a small smile to Eli's face. Mara served him a small bowl, and he ate carefully, savoring each bite. She ate a little herself, just enough to keep going, just enough to stay strong. Night was falling, and the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Mara packed what remained of their food and prepared to move to a safer spot for the night. She wrapped Eli in her coat, feeling his small body shiver against hers. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "we will find more. We will survive." And with that, they walked into the dark streets, two figures against the city's harsh rhythm. Mara's heart was heavy, but it was filled with love. A love strong enough to fight hunger, cold, and loneliness. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but as long as she had Eli, she would keep going. She would keep searching, keep fighting, keep hoping. Because love, she knew, was stronger than any storm. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city streets glistening under the dim glow of streetlights. Puddles reflected the faint orange lights, making the wet asphalt look like a river of fire. Mara held Eli's small hand tightly as they walked. Every step was cautious, every sound amplified in the quiet night. She searched for a corner, a place where they could rest without drawing attention, without fear of being chased away. Eli yawned, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, I'm tired," he said softly. "I know, my love. Soon we'll find a safe place," Mara whispered, forcing a gentle smile. She scanned the streets, spotting an old bus shelter with a broken roof. It wasn't perfect, but it would shield them from the cold night air. She guided Eli inside, setting him down on a dry patch of cardboard she had pulled from a nearby trash heap. As she wrapped her coat tighter around them both, Mara noticed movement from the corner of her eye. A man was walking toward them, his steps careful, his gaze steady. He was not hurried like the others rushing home. Instead, he seemed to notice them, to notice her and Eli. Mara's instincts screamed caution. She had learned long ago that not everyone was kind, and in a world like this, strangers often brought trouble. "Stay close to me," she whispered to Eli, tightening her grip on his hand. The man stopped, a few feet away, raising his hand slightly in a gesture of peace. "I don't mean to scare you," he said softly, his voice gentle. "I saw you from across the street. Are you okay?" Mara's eyes narrowed, but she didn't speak. Words could be dangerous. She studied him, trying to read his intentions. He was wearing simple clothes, a coat that looked worn but clean. His hair was damp from the rain, and his eyes were kind. Something in his demeanor felt different from the others who walked past without a glance. I'm Mara," she finally said cautiously, introducing herself. "And this is my son, Eli." The man nodded slowly. "I'm Daniel, I wanted to see if I could help. You don't have to talk to me if you don't want." Mara's heart raced. Help. She had not heard that word directed at her in a long time. Help was rare, almost like a dream she had stopped believing in. Yet she could not ignore the sincerity in his voice. She glanced at Eli, whose small face peeked from under the coat, eyes wide but curious. He seemed to sense that Daniel meant no harm. "What kind of help?" Mara asked, her voice cautious but tinged with hope. Daniel smiled, a small reassuring smile. "I have some food. Enough for tonight. Maybe I can share it with you and your son." Mara felt a lump in her throat. It had been days since she had eaten a proper meal, and the thought of sharing a warm meal with Eli filled her with emotions she tried to keep buried: relief, gratitude, and disbelief. I don't know," she murmured. "People, they usually take, not give." "I understand," Daniel said gently. "I don't want anything in return, just let me help." Something in Mara told her to trust him, and more importantly, she wanted Eli to experience comfort and warmth, even for one night. She nodded slowly. "Okay, thank you," she whispered. Daniel reached into a bag slung across his shoulder and pulled out a small container of warm soup, some bread, and a few fresh fruits. The smell was heavenly, and Mara's stomach tightened at the aroma. She handed Eli the bread first. He hesitated, then took a bite, his eyes lighting up immediately. Mara smiled, tears threatening to spill. "You like it?" she asked softly. Eli nodded enthusiastically. "It's really good, Mama." Daniel watched them quietly, letting Mara serve the food. There was no rush, no judgment, just a quiet presence that made Mara feel safer than she had in weeks. She noticed that he didn't ask personal questions or pry into their lives. He simply offered help, simple and kind, and for Mara, that was enough. As they ate, Mara began to relax slightly. Her shoulders, which had been tense for days, loosened, and she realized how exhausted she truly was. Daniel seemed to understand her unspoken exhaustion, for he said nothing but gave her space to breathe. After a while, Eli's small hand reached for the fruit. "Can I have this, Mama?" he asked. "Yes, love. It's for you," Mara replied softly, handing him the apple. He bit into it eagerly, savoring the sweetness. Mara watched him, her heart full. In that moment, the world felt a little less cruel, a little less empty. Daniel sat nearby, watching quietly, but after a few minutes he spoke again. "Do you have somewhere safe to sleep tonight?" Mara shook her head. "Not really. We move around, try to find corners or shelters. But most places are full or they don't allow children. We sleep wherever we can." Daniel frowned slightly. "That's not right. You shouldn't have to live like this." Mara's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. "It's the world we live in. I don't have a choice." Daniel reached out but did not touch her. "Maybe you don't have a choice yet, but you can have one soon. If you want, I can help you find a better place. Just for tonight, and maybe more later." Mara looked at him unsure. Trust was not easy, especially for someone who had been on the streets as long as she had. But the kindness in Daniel's eyes, the way he had offered food without judgment, made her heart soften. She nodded slowly. "Okay, thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me," Daniel said. "Just stay safe tonight and let your son rest." After finishing their small meal, Mara and Eli followed Daniel through quiet streets and alleys, places Mara had never noticed before. The city, which had always seemed hostile, suddenly felt less frightening. Even the dim streetlights seemed warmer with Daniel's presence nearby. Finally, they arrived at a small community center tucked away between buildings. The lights inside, were soft, and the air smelled faintly of clean blankets and cooked food. Daniel knocked on the door, and a kind woman greeted them. She smiled warmly at Mara and Eli. "You must be tired," she said gently. "Come in. We have rooms for the night, and dinner is ready." Mara felt tears prick her eyes. She had not felt welcome anywhere in so long. She hesitated for a moment, then took Eli's hand and stepped inside. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. Daniel stayed behind for a moment, watching as Mara and Eli were shown to a small room with a bed and clean blankets. "Good night," he said softly. "Sleep well." "Thank you," Mara whispered, her voice full of gratitude. As the door closed behind them, Mara held Eli close. He was already beginning to relax, his small body sinking into the bed. Mara ran her fingers through his damp hair, feeling warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. The sound of his steady breathing reassured her. For tonight at least they were safe. As Mara lay down beside him, she thought of Daniel's kindness. She wondered why someone would care so much about strangers, why someone would help without expecting anything in return. The thought made her heart ache in a good way, reminding her that there was still goodness in the world. Her mind drifted to tomorrow. The city would still be cruel, still be harsh, still make survival a constant struggle. But now, Mara felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps there were people like Daniel in the world, people who could help her and Eli find more than just scraps of food. Perhaps there was a chance for a life that was warmer, safer, and full of little joys again. She whispered softly to Eli, who was already half asleep. "We'll be okay, my love. We'll be okay." And as she drifted into a light sleep, Mara felt the weight of the past few days lift, just a little. For the first time in a long time, she believed that tomorrow might bring something better. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the windows of the small room at the community center. The warm rays touched Mara's face, and for the first time in weeks she felt a small sense of calm. Eli was still sleeping peacefully, his small chest rising and falling steadily. Mara looked at him and smiled faintly, brushing a damp strand of hair from his forehead. Her mind wandered back to the night before, to Daniel's kindness, to the warmth of food, and the safety of the bed. She had been surviving for so long, moving from one alley to another, hiding from the world, that this moment of calm felt almost unreal. But it was real. For now, she and Eli were safe. Mara dressed quietly, careful not to wake Eli. She stepped into the small communal kitchen to see a group of volunteers preparing breakfast. The smell of freshly cooked porridge and toast filled the air. Mara hesitated, unsure if she was allowed, but a kind-faced woman smiled at her. "Good morning. Help yourself," the woman said gently. "We have plenty for everyone." Mara nodded, her throat tight with gratitude. She filled a small bowl with porridge and carried it back to Eli, who had begun to stir. "Good morning, my love," she whispered. "Morning, Mama," Eli murmured, rubbing his eyes. He sat up slowly and smiled when he saw the food. "It smells so good." Mara smiled and helped him eat. She watched him carefully, noticing how his energy seemed to return with each bite. Her heart swelled. She had been surviving alone for so long, but in this safe place she could breathe just a little easier. After breakfast, Mara decided to take a walk around the center. The courtyard was small but filled with life. Children laughed as they played, volunteers moved about with gentle smiles, and the air felt lighter than the streets outside. Mara realized she had forgotten what it felt like to be around people who cared. Daniel appeared quietly beside her, holding a small notebook. "Good morning," he said softly. Mara nodded, surprised but not uncomfortable. "Morning," she replied. "I thought you might want to know about some programs we have here," Daniel said. "Food, shelter, maybe even work opportunities if you want. And we can help Eli with school. It's not much, but it's a start." Mara felt a mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and a tiny spark of hope. Could life really be different? Could she and Eli have more than scraps and cold nights? But doubt lingered. She had been disappointed so many times before. I don't know if I can," she admitted quietly. "I've been on my own for so long. I've learned to survive by myself." Daniel nodded understandingly. "I know, but surviving is different from living. You deserve more than just surviving, Mara. You deserve a life where you and Eli can grow and be happy. Mara's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. She wanted to believe him, but fear made her hesitate. I'll think about it, she whispered. For the rest of the morning, Mara stayed with Eli, watching him play with other children. He was shy at first, but soon he laughed, his small voice ringing in the courtyard. Mara felt a warmth in her chest she had not felt in months. Maybe, just maybe, life could be better. After lunch, Daniel returned with a small bag. I thought you might need some supplies, he said. Inside were a few clothes for Mara and Eli, some toiletries and a small blanket. Mara accepted them with gratitude, her hands trembling slightly. Thank you, she said, her voice catching. I don't know how to repay you. Daniel smiled softly. Just take care of each other. That's all I ask. Mara hugged the bag close to her chest. She wanted to say more, to tell him how much this meant, but words felt small compared to the feeling in her heart. That evening, as the sun dipped below the buildings, Mara and Eli sat in their small room. The blanket Daniel had given them kept them warm, and the room smelled faintly of clean sheets and food. Mara held Eli close. Mom, do you think we'll have more days like today? Eli asked softly. Mara looked at him, his eyes wide and hopeful. She wanted to tell him yes, that the world was kind and everything would be perfect. But she also knew the truth. Life could still be hard and there would be challenges ahead. Maybe, she said carefully. We'll try our best. And if we do, maybe more good days will come. Eli nodded, satisfied with her answer. He curled up beside her and Mara held him tightly, feeling his warmth and his trust. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where they could live without constant fear and hunger. But life outside the walls of the community center remained harsh. Mara knew that this safety was temporary, that once they left, they would return to the struggle. She had to prepare, to plan, to find a way to hold on to this hope. The next morning, Daniel visited again. I spoke with the coordinator, he said. There's a program that might help you get stable work and housing. It's not guaranteed, but it's a start. Mara listened carefully, her heart beating faster. The thought of stability, of not having to scavenge for food every day, seemed almost impossible. But Daniel's calm, patient voice made it feel real. What would I have to do? She asked. Just participate in the program. They'll help with skills, and if everything goes well, you can get a small job and even a place to stay. It's not much, but it's a beginning. Mara hesitated, fear creeping in. What if she failed? What if she couldn't keep up? But then she looked at Eli, playing with a small toy, laughing freely. He deserved a chance at a better life. And so despite her fear, she nodded. I'll try, she said quietly. Daniel smiled, a warm, encouraging smile. That's all anyone can ask. One step at a time. The days that followed were filled with small routines. Mara attended workshops, learning simple skills that could help her find work. She cooked with other mothers, shared stories, and slowly began to understand that she was not alone. The kindness she had experienced from Daniel and the volunteers made her heart lighter. She still worried, still feared failure, but each day brought a little more confidence, a little more hope. Eli adjusted quickly. He attended a small class for children at the center, where he learned letters, numbers, and small stories. He came home each day excited, eager to tell Mara what he had learned. She smiled at his enthusiasm, feeling a deep sense of pride. For so long, she had only focused on survival, but now she began to see the importance of nurturing, teaching, and encouraging Eli. One evening, as they sat together in their small room, Mara reflected on how far they had come. You've grown so much, Eli, she said softly. Eli looked at her, eyes shining. I'm happy, Mama. I like it here. Mara held him close, feeling tears of joy prick her eyes. Me too, love. Me too. But even as happiness bloomed in their hearts, Mara knew that the world outside was still uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, moments of fear and days of struggle. But she had learned something important. Kindness existed, and hope could take root even in the harshest places. With Daniel's help, the warmth of the community center, and her unwavering love for Eli, Mara began to believe that a better life was possible. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she was ready to face it, step by step, with courage and determination. As night fell and the city outside grew quiet, Mara whispered to Eli, No matter what happens, we'll face it together. Eli smiled sleepily, resting his head against her chest. Together. he whispered. And in that moment, Mara felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The following morning, Mara woke to the sound of distant traffic and the soft murmur of children playing in the courtyard outside. The sunlight filtered through the small window of their room, bringing warmth and a sense of comfort. For the first time in months, Mara felt she could breathe without the constant tension of fear pressing down on her. Eli was already awake, bouncing on the bed with excitement. "Mama, I want to go outside. Can we play?" Mara smiled, brushing the damp hair from his forehead. "Of course, love. Let's get ready." She dressed him in the clean clothes Daniel had brought and tied his shoes carefully. Seeing him so happy, she felt a mixture of relief and hope. It was rare to see him this carefree, and she wanted to protect this moment of innocence as fiercely as she could. They stepped into the courtyard, where other children laughed and ran, their voices bright against the morning air. Mara watched Eli join them hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. A little boy offered him a toy car, and Eli's face lit up with a wide smile. Mara felt a warm ache in her chest. In this safe place, her son could be a child again, free from hunger and worry, even if only for a few hours each day. But as the day progressed, Mara's mind turned toward reality. Safety here was temporary. They could not stay forever. One day they would have to leave and face the harsh streets again. She had to plan carefully if they were to survive and, more importantly, if she wanted Eli to have a future. Daniel approached her in the courtyard, holding a small folder. "Good morning," he said softly. "I've spoken with the coordinator about a longer-term plan. There's a possibility of temporary housing, but you would need to start work soon." Mara's stomach tightened. Work meant leaving Eli, even if just for a few hours, but it also meant stability. I can try," she said uncertainly. "But what if I can't manage?" Daniel shook his head gently. "You will. One step at a time, and we'll help you." Her heart felt heavy yet determined. Mara knew this was an opportunity she could not ignore. She had survived so long on scraps, fear, and hope alone. Now, with support, she might be able to give Eli more than temporary safety. She nodded. "Okay, I'll try." The first day at the temporary work program was harder than Mara had expected. She was assigned to help in a small bakery attached to the center, preparing ingredients and cleaning tables. It was honest work, but her hands were stiff and her body ached from the unfamiliar tasks. She struggled to keep up, embarrassed when she dropped utensils or miscounted items. A kind supervisor noticed her struggle. "Take your time," she said gently. "Everyone starts somewhere. You'll get the hang of it." Mara nodded, grateful for the encouragement. She focused on doing her best, thinking of Eli waiting for her in the room above the bakery. Each task she completed was a step toward a better life. Meanwhile, Eli was adjusting quickly to his small school program. He learned letters, numbers, and simple stories, coming home each day eager to share what he had learned. "Mama, I can write my name," he shouted one evening, holding up a piece of paper with uneven letters. Mara smiled, pride swelling in her chest. "That's wonderful, Eli. You're learning so fast." Her heart ached with love. These moments reminded her why she had endured so much hardship. She wanted Eli to grow up confident, happy, and safe. She wanted him to believe in kindness, hope, and a future better than the one she had known. But the outside world was relentless. One rainy afternoon, Mara and Eli stepped out to collect supplies, only to find themselves facing the reality they had tried to leave behind. The streets were slippery, filled with puddles and trash, and the harsh cold bit at their cheeks. Mara held Eli close, shielding him with her coat as they walked quickly. A man shouting from across the street startled Eli, who clutched her hand tightly. Mara's heart raced, her instincts on high alert. She guided him into a sheltered doorway, holding him close until his small body relaxed. "Mama, are we safe?" He whispered. "Yes, love. We're safe," Mara said softly. She felt a surge of protectiveness. No matter how hard life became, she would always shield him. She had survived the streets before. She could do it again. Later that day, as they returned to the center, Mara reflected on the challenges ahead. Temporary safety was a gift, but she knew she had to prepare for the world outside. Hunger, danger, and cold would not disappear. She would need determination, courage, and careful planning to navigate it all. Daniel noticed her concern and approached gently. "You're doing well," he said, "but I know it's not easy. I just want you to remember, you're not alone anymore. We're here to help. Mara looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and worry in her eyes. Thank you, I just want to give Eli a life that's safe, full of hope, not just survival. Daniel nodded. And you will. One day at a time. We'll help you get there. Encouraged by his words, Mara focused on the tasks at hand. She worked hard at the bakery, learned quickly, and slowly earned the trust of the staff. They offered tips, guidance, and small compliments that built her confidence. Mara realized that this was not just work. It was a way to regain control over her life, to take steps toward stability. Eli thrived as well. He made friends, learned new things, and began to talk about his dreams. Mama, I want to be a teacher someday, he said one evening, cuddled up in their small room. Mara smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. You can be anything, Eli. I'll do everything I can to help you. Despite these small victories, challenges continued to appear. Mara discovered that even temporary housing required careful budgeting, punctual attendance, and adherence to rules she was not used to following. A few times she worried that she might fail, that the system might reject her, or that she might lose her place. One afternoon, Mara faced a particularly difficult moment. She had been assigned to prepare a large batch of bread, but a small mistake caused a minor mess. Flour spilled everywhere, and the smell of burnt dough filled the small bakery. Mara's heart sank as she feared the worst. The supervisor, however, remained calm. It's okay, she said kindly. Mistakes happen. You just need to focus and try again. Mara felt relief wash over her. She realized that in this new world, mistakes were not disasters, they were opportunities to learn. This was different from the streets where a single misstep could mean hunger, cold, or danger. That evening, Mara shared the day's events with Eli. He listened carefully, offering a small hug. Mama, you're strong, he said. Mara smiled through tears. I have to be strong for you, she said softly. But you're strong too, my love. Never forget that. As the days passed, Mara and Eli began to see progress. Their routines became familiar. Their small victories added up, and hope grew stronger with each day. Mara learned to manage her time, budget the little money they earned, and navigate the community resources available to them. Yet, Mara never let herself forget the streets, the hunger, and the cold nights that had brought her to this point. She used those memories as motivation, a reminder of why she could not give up. Every challenge she faced now was tempered by the knowledge that survival had taught her resilience. One rainy evening, as Mara tucked Eli into bed, she whispered, Tomorrow is another day, Eli, a day where we can grow, learn, and take another step toward our dreams. Eli's small hand reached for hers. Together, Mama? Together, Mara replied, holding him close. She felt hope flicker brightly within her, stronger than ever before. She knew the journey ahead would still be difficult, filled with trials and uncertainty, but she was no longer alone. With determination, love, and the kindness of those around her, Mara believed they could face whatever challenges came next. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a better life, not just for herself but for Eli, her shining light in a dark world. And as she drifted to sleep, she felt the weight of fear lift slightly, replaced by the quiet, steady strength of hope. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over the city. Mara stood by the small window of their room at the community center, watching the streets below. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of calm and purpose. She could see the world outside, not as a threat, but as a place of possibility. Eli was already awake, bouncing on the bed with excitement. Mama, today's the day, right? The new house? He asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Mara smiled, brushing his damp hair from his forehead. Yes, love. Today we move to our new place. It's small, but it's ours. Eli's face lit up and he jumped off the bed, hugging her tightly. I'm so happy, Mama. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. For so long, she had survived on scraps, moving from alley to alley, always hungry, always cold. But now, through determination, courage, and the kindness of people like Daniel, they were stepping into a new chapter of life. A life where fear would not rule their days, where hunger would not dominate their nights. They packed their few belongings carefully. Mara had learned over the months to live simply, valuing what truly mattered: food, clothing, and memories that kept them warm. Daniel arrived at the center, holding the small keys to their new home. Ready? He asked, smiling warmly. Mara nodded, taking Eli's hand. Yes, thank you, Daniel. For everything. You earned it, Daniel replied. You both did. The journey to their new home was short, but for Mara it felt monumental. The streets, once terrifying and hostile, now felt like paths leading to hope. Mara kept her hand tightly on Eli's, guiding him carefully as she had done countless times in the past. But this time there was no fear in her heart, only anticipation. Finally, they arrived at a small, modest apartment. It was nothing grand, but it was safe, clean, and warm. Mara opened the door slowly, letting Eli step inside first. His eyes widened at the sight of the small living room, the little kitchen, and the bedroom with a simple bed. Mama, it's beautiful, he exclaimed. Mara smiled, feeling a surge of relief and joy. For the first time in years, she could breathe fully, knowing that they had a place to call their own. She hugged Eli tightly, whispering, It's ours, love. Ours. Daniel helped them settle in, showing them the basics, how to use the stove, how to store food, and the simple rules of the building. Mara listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Though the apartment was small, it represented freedom, stability, and dignity. After Daniel left, Mara and Eli explored their new home. Eli ran from room to room, laughing and shouting, Mama, look, my room. He pointed to the small bedroom, already imagining his toys neatly arranged on a shelf. Mara watched him, her heart full. She remembered the nights spent in alleys, searching for scraps and the endless struggle to keep him warm. Now he could play freely, learn and grow without constant fear. She felt a deep gratitude for Daniel, the volunteers, and even for the challenges that had brought them here. Every hardship had taught her resilience, courage, and the value of hope. After settling in, Mara cooked a simple meal of soup and bread, the food tasting richer than anything she had eaten in months. They ate together at the small table, Eli chattering happily about his plans for his new room, his new friends, and all the games he wanted to play. Mama, Eli said between bites, can I invite my new friends over tomorrow? Mara smiled, nodding. Of course, love. This is your home too. You can share it with anyone you like. As the evening approached, Mara sat by the window watching the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. She reflected on their journey, the cold nights, the hunger, the fear, and the endless struggle to survive. But now she saw the path they had walked with clarity. Each step, each moment of courage had led them here. Daniel visited that evening, bringing a small gift for Eli, a set of books and a notebook. For learning and dreaming, he said with a smile. Eli's eyes sparkled as he took the books. Thank you, Daniel. I'll read them every day. Mara felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had been alone with Eli for so long, but now they were supported, guided, and protected. The kindness of others had shown her that the world could be gentle, that hope could exist even in the darkest moments. That night, Mara tucked Eli into bed. He hugged his new blanket, clutching it tightly. Mama, I feel happy here, he whispered. I'm happy too, love, Mara said softly. We've worked so hard to get here, and now we can dream. Eli closed his eyes, drifting into sleep with a smile on his face. Mara watched him, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. For so long, her life had been filled with fear and uncertainty, but now she could finally see a future where they could live, learn, and grow. Mara lay beside him, thinking of the journey ahead. There would still be challenges, adjustments, and moments of doubt. But she felt ready. She had faced the worst and survived. She had loved fiercely, protected relentlessly, and never given up. And now, with a safe home, stability, and hope, she could finally begin to rebuild their lives. The next morning, Mara woke early. The sunlight filled the room, bright and warm. She looked at Eli, still asleep, and felt a surge of determination. Today, she decided, they would take their first steps toward a brighter future. She prepared a simple breakfast, and they ate together, savoring the quiet comfort of their new home. Mara felt proud of herself, proud of the small victories that had brought them here. Each moment of patience, courage, and resilience had shaped their path. After breakfast, Mara helped Eli organize his new room. She hung up his clothes, arranged his small collection of toys, and set up a small corner for reading and learning. As she worked, she felt a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. This was more than survival. This was living. By midday, Daniel returned to check on them. "How's everything?" he asked, smiling warmly. Mara smiled back. "It's perfect, Daniel. Thank you for helping us. We couldn't have done this without you." Daniel shook his head. "No, Mara, you did this. I just guided you a little. You and Eli worked hard, never gave up, and believed in something better. That's what made this possible." Mara felt tears prick her eyes. I want Eli to have a good life. That's all I've ever wanted. And he will," Daniel said firmly. "Because of you, Mara. Your love, your courage, your determination, they've brought you here. This is just the beginning." Eli ran up to Daniel holding his new books. "Look, Daniel. These are mine." "Thank you." Daniel knelt down, smiling at the boy. "You're welcome, Eli. Keep learning, dreaming, and being brave." That afternoon, Mara sat with Eli near the window watching children play in a nearby park. She thought about the journey they had endured. The cold nights, the hunger, the fear, and the constant struggle for survival. And she realized something profound. Every hardship had prepared them for this moment. Every tear, every anxious night, every ounce of courage had led them to safety, stability, and hope. Mara hugged Eli tightly. "We made it, love. We really made it." Eli hugged her back, his small arms wrapping around her neck. "We did, Mama, together." As the sun set, casting a warm glow over their new home, Mara felt a quiet peace. She knew the future would still hold challenges, but she also knew something stronger. Love, determination, and hope could overcome even the hardest trials. For the first time in years, Mara allowed herself to dream. She dreamed of a life where Eli could grow without fear, where laughter replaced tears, and where kindness guided their days. She dreamed of a future filled with possibility, and she knew deep in her heart that they had earned it. The city outside continued its rhythm, but inside their small apartment, Mara and Eli were free. Free from fear, free from hunger, free to grow and thrive. And for Mara, that was everything. She whispered softly to Eli, who was already half asleep. "Tomorrow we start a new chapter, my love. A chapter full of hope, dreams, and love." Eli murmured in his sleep. "Together, Mama." Mara smiled, holding him close, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a complete sense of peace. They had survived. They had struggled. They had hoped. And now at last they were free to begin anew.